She was a bride of 6 hours, and already she knew the taste of being unwanted. Alara sat on the edge of the vast canopied bed, still in her ivory silk wedding gown, the lace sleeves scratching against her wrists. The candles had burned low. The house had fallen silent. Her husband had not come. She had waited, hands folded, listening to the distant chime of the long-case clock in the gallery. 1:15, then 1:30, then 1. She rose at last, bare feet sinking into the thick carpet, and drifted to the door that connected her chambers to his. The oak was dark and heavy, a barrier more than a threshold. As she lifted her hand to knock, voices murmured in the corridor beyond. She recognized the low, clipped tones of her husband and the respectful murmur of his valet. She should have stepped away. She did not. "Your Grace, the Duchess is waiting," Finch said gently. A pause. Then Lucian Ashford, Duke of Thornwood, spoke with a weariness that chilled her bones. "Let her wait. This marriage changes nothing. The union was a matter of duty, a settlement of old debts and political convenience. She is a means to an end, nothing more. My heart, Finch, is not part of the arrangement. It never will be." Alara's hand fell from the door. She did not gasp or cry out. She simply stood there, the words settling into her chest like stones dropped into still water. She had known it was a marriage of rescue, not affection. Her father, the Earl of Vance, had died disgraced and broken, falsely accused of treason before the truth came too late. Her family name lay in ruins, her mother and younger sister dependent on the charity of resentful relatives. When the Duke of Thornwood offered for her hand, it seemed a miracle, a cold, distant miracle. She had hoped, foolishly, that time might soften him, that she might find friendship, perhaps even tenderness. But his words to Finch crushed that hope before it could take its first breath. She returned to the bed and sat down again. The candles guttered. She did not weep. Weeping required an expectation of comfort, and she no longer had any. The morning brought no relief. Breakfast was served in a sunlit parlor that might have been beautiful if it did not feel so empty. Lucian appeared, immaculate in a charcoal coat, and took the seat opposite her. He inclined his head politely. "Good morning, Alara." She murmured a reply. He unfolded a newspaper and read in silence. She stirred her tea and watched the sugar dissolve. A footman served kippers and toast. The scrape of silver against porcelain filled the room like a second language, the only conversation they shared. She tried that first week to reach him. She asked about Thornwood Hall, about its history and its lands. He answered in short, informative sentences, a steward delivering a report. She inquired after his interests. He confessed to none. She dressed carefully each evening, choosing colors she thought might please him, and received not a single glance of notice. One afternoon she wandered into the library and found him there, reading by the fire. She sat in the chair opposite and simply existed in his presence. He did not look up. After 20 minutes of silence, he closed his book and said, without warmth, "You need not shadow me, Alara. I gave you my name. I did not promise you my time." She left the library with her spine straight and her lip caught between her teeth until she tasted copper. That night, alone in her chamber, she whispered to the darkness, "I will not beg." It was the first promise she made to herself in that house. It would not be the last. Winter arrived and Thornwood Hall grew colder. The household staff, under the direction of Mrs. Pritchard, the housekeeper, treated her with careful deference but little warmth. They sensed, as servants always do, that the Duke's indifference set the tone. Only Lady Catherine, Lucian's younger sister, offered anything like companionship. Catherine was a quiet young woman with watchful eyes, and she sought Alara out for walks in the frosted gardens. Their conversations were tentative at first, but slowly a friendship formed, delicate as new ice. It was Catherine who first let slip a fragment of hope. Walking along a path lined with skeletal oaks, she said, "My brother was not always this way. There was a time he laughed easily." She stopped, as if she had said too much. Alara did not press. She tucked the fragment away like a pressed flower, something to examine later. The first true crack in the ice came during a storm. Thunder rolled over the hills and lightning split the sky, and Alara, who had been reading in the small sitting room she had claimed as her own, flinched at each crash. Sleep was impossible. She ventured down to the library, thinking the distraction of new books might help. She did not expect to find Lucien there, standing by the window, staring into the churning darkness. He turned when she entered. For a moment his expression was unguarded, and she saw exhaustion and something deeper, something haunted. Then the mask slid back. "You dislike storms," he observed. She nodded. "They remind me of the night my father was taken." The thunder sounded like the pounding on the door. He said nothing, but after a pause he crossed to the fireplace, took a heavy woolen blanket from a chest, and carried it to her. He draped it over her shoulders himself, his fingers brushing her collarbone for the briefest instant. The gesture was so unexpected that she forgot to breathe. "Thornwood Hall is safe," he said quietly. "No one will pound on these doors." She looked up at him, searching for meaning behind the words. His gaze held hers for a heartbeat, then he stepped back, and the distance returned. But that night, Alara sat wrapped in the blanket until dawn, and the hope she had tried to bury stirred reluctantly back to life. The hope did not survive the county assembly 3 weeks later. The assembly was held at a neighboring estate, a social obligation Lucien could not avoid. Alara wore a gown of midnight blue silk, and for the first time since her wedding she felt something like confidence. The local gentry were curious and not unkind. She was introduced, she smiled, she made pleasant conversation. And then she met Sir Julian Ashby. Sir Julian was a baronet with an easy smile and a warm, open manner. He asked her to dance, and she accepted. He was charming without being forward, complimentary without being insincere. They danced a quadrille, then a waltz. He made her laugh. It felt like sunlight breaking through clouds. Then she caught Lucien's stare from across the room. He stood near the refreshment table, a glass of wine untouched in his hand, his eyes fixed on her with an intensity that made her stumble. There was no jealousy in that gaze, she told herself. It was merely cold disapproval. When the dance ended, she excused herself and approached her husband. Before she could speak, he took her elbow and guided her to a quiet alcove. His voice was low and cutting. "You are making a spectacle of yourself. Sir Julian is a known flirt. Did you give any thought to how it appears when my wife laughs so freely in another man's arms?" The accusation struck her like a slap. "I was merely dancing. I meant no impropriety." "Your intentions do not matter. Your actions do." He released her elbow and stepped back, his expression shuddered. "Remember whose name you carry." He left her standing in the alcove. Several nearby guests averted their eyes, and Lady Margaret, a local baroness with a love of scandal, smiled with malicious satisfaction. Alara felt the heat of humiliation crawl up her neck. She did not return to the dance floor. She stood rigid and smiling until the carriage came to take them home. The ride back was silent. Inside, Alara stared out the window at the black countryside, and the hope that had flickered since the night of the storm sputtered and died. She understood now. He did not want her affection. He wanted her invisible. Very well, she thought. I can be invisible. From that night, Alara stopped seeking her husband. She stopped lingering in rooms he frequented. She stopped dressing for his notice. She stopped waiting for him at dinner, arranging her schedule so they rarely shared a meal. She found new purpose. She began visiting the estate tenants with Mrs. Pritchard, learning their names and their hardships. She discovered that the village school had closed years ago for lack of funds, and many children worked instead of learning to read. She quietly redirected a portion of her personal allowance to hire a young teacher and reopen the school. She did not ask Lucien's permission. She did not think he would care. She was right. He did not notice for nearly a month. When he finally discovered her project, he summoned her to his study. She stood before his desk, calm and composed, while he frowned at a ledger. "You have been spending money on a school." "Yes, the children needed it." You might have consulted me. You made it clear I should not trouble you with my time. I assumed that extended to my activities. Something flickered in his eyes. She could not name it. He closed the ledger. The school may continue. See that it does not become a burden on the estate's coffers. It was neither praise nor gratitude, but it was permission, and permission was enough. The school flourished. The tenants began to speak of the young duchess with warmth. Children brought her wildflowers. Mothers blessed her at market. Alara discovered a deep, quiet satisfaction in their regard. She might never be loved by her husband, but she could be useful, and usefulness, she found, was a balm. Spring came, and with it, Sir Julian Ashby began calling at Thornwood Hall. His visits were ostensibly to discuss boundary adjustments and local improvements, but he always found time to walk with Alara in the gardens. Catherine sometimes joined them, and the three formed an easy, laughing trio. Julian never crossed any line of propriety, but his admiration was plain. He listened to her opinions. He praised her work with the school. He made her feel seen. Lucian noticed. The first sign came during a dinner Julian attended. Alara and Julian were discussing poetry, and she quoted a line from Byron. Julian smiled and said, "You have a rare mind, Your Grace. Thornwood is fortunate." Before Alara could reply, Lucian set down his glass with a sharp click. "Sir Julian, I wonder if you might advise me on a matter of drainage in the lower fields, since you are so eager to improve my estate." The comment was pointed and rude. Julian's smile tightened, but he replied with grace. Alara looked at her plate, her appetite gone. After Julian departed, she turned to Lucian in the hall. "You were discourteous to our guest." "I do not like him. He has been nothing but kind." "Kind?" Lucian repeated the word as if it were a foreign language. "Is that what you call a man who circles another man's wife like a hawk over a field mouse?" "I am not a field mouse, and I am not being circled. Sir Julian offers friendship. I had forgotten what friendship felt like, since I find none in this house." The words hung between them. For a moment Lucian's expression fractured. Beneath the ice she glimpsed something raw, something wounded. He reached for her, his hand stopping just short of her arm. "Alara." "Good night, Your Grace." She turned and walked up the stairs without looking back. She did not see him stand in the hall for long minutes, his hand still extended toward empty air. The next day Catherine found Alara in the garden. They sat on a stone bench, and Catherine spoke hesitantly. "There is something you should know about Lucian, about why he is the way he is." Alara listened. "When we were children, we had a younger brother. His name was William. He was 8 years old, and he worshipped Lucian. One afternoon, Lucian dared him to climb the old oak by the river. William fell. He died in Lucian's arms before help could arrive." Catherine's voice was thick. "Lucian has never forgiven himself. He believes his recklessness killed William. He closed himself off after that. Our parents never blamed him, but he blamed himself enough for all of us. I think he decided he did not deserve love, and he refused to risk causing pain to anyone else he might care for. He built walls, and no one has ever been allowed through them." Alara felt the pieces click into place. The storm, the blanket, the fleeting softness always followed by retreat. He wasn't cold because he didn't care. He was cold because he was terrified of caring. The revelation brought no immediate comfort. It only deepened the ache. She sought him out that evening in the library. He was at his desk, writing. She stood in the doorway, and without preamble she said, "Catherine told me about William." His pen stopped. The silence stretched until it vibrated. Then he rose, and the look on his face was terrible. She had no right. "She was trying to help me understand you." "There is nothing to understand." His voice was harsh, but it trembled at the edges. "What happened was my doing, my fault. I will not discuss it with you." "Lucian, it was an accident. You were a boy." "Enough." The word cracked through the room. He braced his hands on the desk, head bowed. "You know nothing. You come into my house, you tend your school, you charm my neighbors, and you think that grants you the right to pry into wounds that are none of your concern. This marriage was a duty, a transaction. I did not ask for your pity." Ilara's throat closed. She had thought she had no more tears for him. She was wrong. They burned behind her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. "I did not offer you pity. I offered you a wife, but you have made it abundantly clear you do not want one." She drew a breath. "I will not trouble you again." She left the library and walked to her chambers with measured steps. Inside, she packed a small trunk, not in a fit of rage but with the calm of a woman who had finally accepted the truth. She would visit her aunt in Bath for a few weeks. Distance would do them both good. She informed Mrs. Pritchard and wrote a brief note for Lucien, leaving it on the hall table. She did not wait for a reply. A month passed. Bath was gentle and gray, and her aunt was kind. Ilara walked the crescents, read novels, and tried to remember who she had been before she became a duchess no one wanted. Slowly, the sharp edge of her pain dulled into a manageable ache. She told herself she was healing. Then the letter came from Catherine. "Lucien is ill. He was caught in a storm searching the estate for a missing child. One of your schoolchildren had wandered off during a downpour. He found the boy and brought him home safely, but he has taken a dangerous fever. The physician is concerned. He has been calling your name in his delirium. Please come home." Ilara read the letter 3 times. Her hands shook. She was on the next coach before her aunt could finish protesting. Thornwood Hall was hushed and shadowed when she arrived. Mrs. Pritchard met her at the door, her face drawn with worry. "He's in his chamber, Your Grace. He won't let anyone but Finch near him, and even Finch struggles. He keeps asking for you, but when he's lucid, he refuses to send for you." "I'm here now," Ilara said, and climbed the stairs. The room was dim, the curtains drawn against the afternoon light. Lucien lay in the great bed, his dark hair plastered to his forehead, his skin pale and slick with sweat. He was muttering, restless, his hands gripping the sheets. Finch, the valet, looked up with relief when she entered. "Duchess, thank heaven." Ilara took the chair by the bed. She dipped a cloth in cool water and pressed it to Lucien's brow. At her touch, he stilled. His eyes, glazed with fever, opened and found her face. "Ilara," he rasped, "you came back." "I came back," she said softly. "Rest now." He caught her wrist with surprising strength. "I didn't mean it, what I said. The marriage, it was never a transaction to me. I chose you. I saw you at the Willoughby ball 2 years ago. You were wearing green. You laughed, and it was like spring breaking through winter. I couldn't forget you." Her heart stopped. She stared at him. "When your father's disgrace ruined your prospects, I couldn't bear the thought of you suffering. I arranged the marriage not out of duty, but because I wanted to protect you. I told Finch my heart was not part of it because I was terrified. Terrified that if I let myself love you, I would destroy you the way I destroyed William. So I pushed you away. I hurt you to keep you safe from me." His voice cracked. "But you kept being kind. You kept being bright. And I was too much a coward to let you in." The confession poured out in feverish fragments, and Ilara listened, tears spilling down her cheeks. She held his hand and waited until he drifted into exhausted sleep. She did not leave the chair for 2 days. She nursed him through the fever's worst, spooning broth between his cracked lips, changing the cloths, whispering calm words when the nightmares came. Catherine and Mrs. Pritchard begged her to rest, but she would not. She had waited so long for the truth. She would not leave it now. On the 3rd morning, the fever broke. Lucien opened his eyes, and this time they were clear. He looked at her, and shame and hope warred in his expression. "You're still here." "Yes. I remember what I said." "Was it true?" she asked quietly. He closed his eyes, then opened them again. "Every word. I have loved you from the beginning. I was just too afraid to be worthy of it. I still am." Ilara reached for his hand. "Then let me decide what is worthy. I have spent over a year in this house believing I was unwanted. You let me believe that. Do not ask me to forgive it all at once, but I am here. And if you truly love me, then show me. not in grand confessions but in every day that follows. Lucian's jaw tightened. Slowly, with great effort, he lifted her hand and pressed it to his lips. It was a gesture of such humility, such tentative devotion, that Alara's heart broke and mended in the same beat. He healed slowly. The first week he could sit in the parlor, she read to him. The second week he walked with her in the garden, leaning on a cane, and pointed out the places where he and William had played as boys. He told her stories, halting at first, then with growing ease. He introduced her to the brother he had lost, and in doing so he allowed her to know him. One afternoon, sitting under the old oak that had witnessed the tragedy, he said, "I blamed myself for so long that I forgot how to live. You reminded me. The way you care for the tenants, the children. You brought life back to Thornwood. You brought life back to me." She leaned her head on his shoulder. "Then let it be a new beginning." That summer, Lucian funded the expansion of the village school himself and attended the opening ceremony at Alara's side. When Sir Julian Ashby visited, he greeted him with a civility that was almost warmth, and when Julian danced with Alara at the midsummer ball, Lucian watched with a small, secure smile instead of a glare. He trusted her. He trusted himself. On the anniversary of their wedding, he asked her to meet him in the library at dusk. She found him standing where they had argued months before, but this time his face was open, his eyes soft. He took both her hands. "I gave you a marriage of duty," he said. "Now I am asking for a marriage of choice. Will you stay with me, Alara? Not because you must, but because you want to." She looked at the man who had once seemed carved from ice and saw the warmth flooding through every crack. "I stopped hopping for your love a long time ago," she whispered, "but I never stopped loving you." He kissed her then, a gentle and reverent kiss that tasted of promise. Outside, the summer evening settled over Thornwood Hall like a blessing. Inside, two hearts, scarred and tender, began at last to beat in unison. Their life together did not become a fairy tale free of shadows. Lucian still carried grief, and Alara still carried the memory of lonely nights, but they carried them together. In the years that followed, the school grew, and the sound of children's laughter drifted up to the hall. Catherine married a kind country gentleman. A new portrait was hung in the gallery, not of a duke or a duchess, but of a family, imperfect and alive. And on cold nights when storms rolled through the valley, Lucian no longer stood alone at the window. He would find Alara, wrap a blanket around them both, and hold her until the thunder passed. The walls he had built were gone. In their place was something far stronger. A love that had walked through fire, through silence, through regret, and had emerged at last into the light. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to give it a like and subscribe to the channel. Also, let us know in the comments which country you're watching from. Your support means a lot to us. Thank you for watching, and see you in the next amazing story.